January 13th, 2026. If you work in IT, if you manage a fleet of laptops, or if you simply tried to log into your work computer that morning, that date is burned into your memory. It was supposed to be the coronation. 2026 was the year Satya Nadella promised the AI revolution. It was the year Copilot would rewrite the economy. It was the year the operating system became an agent. But on the morning of January 14th, the world didn't wake up to a revolution. It woke up to a blue screen. Remote desktops collapsed, critical servers failed to boot, and millions of users found that their AI-powered machines couldn't perform the most basic function of a computer, turning off. This isn't just a story about a bad update. Bugs happen, code breaks. This is the story of a slow-motion car crash that started 12 years ago. It involves a trillion-dollar company that fired its safety inspectors to save a few dollars. It involves a CEO obsessed with a ghost called AI. And it involves the breaking of a sacred, unspoken contract that runs the global economy. This is the story of how Microsoft forgot the lesson that IBM learned the hard way. You cannot build the future on a crumbling foundation. To understand the magnitude of the 2026 collapse, you have to understand the ritual. For 20 years, the corporate world ran on a heartbeat. It was called Patch Tuesday. Introduced in 2003, it was a promise. On the second Tuesday of every month, Microsoft would release security updates. They were tested, they were validated, they were safe. System administrators would wait for the signal, deploy the patches, and the world would keep spinning. Microsoft wasn't just a software vendor. It was a nation-state. It provided the concrete and the steel for the digital infrastructure of the planet. And the unspoken contract was simple. You pay us the Microsoft tax, the licensing fees, the enterprise agreements, and we keep the lights on. We make sure the plumbing works. They were the invincible monopoly. Sure, people hated Windows Vista. Sure, people mocked Internet Explorer. But when it came to the kernel, when it came to the enterprise, Microsoft was boring. And in IT, boring is good. Boring is stable. But in 2014, the culture changed. Steve Ballmer, the loud, sweating salesman, stepped down. Enter Satya Nadella. Nadella was different. He was quiet, he was philosophical, he quoted poetry, and he had a vision. Windows as a service. It sounds modern, it sounds agile, but to achieve it, Microsoft made a decision that would eventually lead to the catastrophe of 2026. They looked at their balance sheet. They looked at the thousands of employees whose only job was to test software, the SDETs, Software Development Engineers in Test. These were the people who spent all day trying to break Windows so that you wouldn't have to. And Microsoft fired them. In July 2014, Microsoft cut 18,000 jobs. They gutted the dedicated QA teams. The logic was seductive. Why pay thousands of testers when you have millions of users? Why not let the developers test their own code? Or better yet, why not let the customers do it for free? They called it the Windows Insider Program. They framed it as an exclusive club. Become an insider. See the future first. Shape the OS. It was a masterclass in marketing. They turned a critical engineering function into a gamified badge of honor. To the users, it felt like being part of the team. To Microsoft, it was a petri dish. They replaced professional, methodical, paid engineers with enthusiastic amateurs. You don't let programmers debug their code for the same reason you don't let writers be their own editor. You need fresh eyes. But Microsoft blinded themselves. And for a while, it worked. The stock price soared. From 2014 to 2025, Microsoft stock grew by nearly 1,000%. Wall Street loved the efficiency. They loved the cloud revenue. They loved the margins. But while the stock price was going to the moon, the quality of the product was sinking into the mud. The cracks started small. A printer driver here, a start menu glitch there. But by 2026, the cracks had become canyons. Which brings us to January 2026, update KB 5074119. It was a standard security update. It fixed 114 vulnerabilities. It was routine. Until it wasn't. Within hours of the rollout, the reports started flooding in. First, it was the shutdown bug. You would click shutdown, the screen would go black, the fans would spin down, and then the machine would reboot. It was a zombie operating system. It refused to die. Then came the remote desktop collapse. For the enterprise, this was the kill shot. Admins trying to log into Azure Virtual Desktop, trying to manage servers remotely, were met with authentication errors. The credentials simply stopped working. The tools used to fix the computers were broken by the computers. And then, for a limited number of users, corporate speak for too many, the boot loops began. Stop code unmountable boot volume. The irony was suffocating. At the exact moment IT admins were scrambling to roll back updates in a panic, Microsoft's CEO was giving interviews about the future. He was bragging. He said that 30% of Microsoft's code was now written by AI. Let that sink in. The company that fired its human testers was now using non-human coders. They were feeding non-human code into an operating system tested by unpaid volunteers. It was a machine building a machine with no one at the wheel. The January update was so bad that Microsoft had to issue an out-of-band update, an emergency patch, KB 5077744. And then that patch broke Outlook, so they issued another emergency patch, KB 5078127. 3 updates in 2 weeks. For a system administrator, this isn't just annoying, it's terrifying. It's the burning platform moment. It's the moment you realize the ground beneath your feet isn't solid rock anymore, it's sand. Microsoft forgot the history of their industry. In the 1990s, IBM was the king. They were arrogant, they were bloated, they thought they could dictate the market because they were the market. But they rotted from the inside. Their culture shifted from customer service to financial engineering. Lou Gersten, the man who saved IBM, said it best. You cannot build a future on a crumbling foundation. He had to purge the arrogance to save the company. The parallel is haunting. Microsoft is chasing the next big thing. They are chasing the AI ghost. They want to be the company of the neural network, but they are forgetting that they are the company of the file system. AI should be the pillar, but Windows is the foundation. If Windows breaks, the AI has nowhere to live. If the server doesn't boot, Copilot can't help you. The tragedy of the 2026 meltdown isn't that the code was bad. Code is always bad. The tragedy is that it was inevitable. It was the mathematical result of a decade of negligence. Microsoft's stock price might be up 969% since Nadella took over. A $10,000 investment in 2014 would be worth over $100,000 today. But ask any sysadmin what they would pay for a stable night of sleep in January 2026. They would tell you that the stock price is a lie. The unspoken contract is broken. Patch Tuesday is no longer a ritual of safety. It is a game of Russian roulette. Users are pausing updates. Admins are delaying patches. The ecosystem is becoming less secure, not because of hackers, but because of fear of the vendor. They are scared of the cure more than the disease. Microsoft has proven they can get 1 billion users on Windows 11. They proved they can make the stock line go up. But on January 13th, 2026, they proved something else. They proved that you can be the most valuable company on Earth and still not know how to shut down a computer. The question isn't whether Microsoft will fix the bugs. They will, they always do. The question is whether they will fix the culture that created them. Or will they continue to let the machine run the world while they chase the ghosts in the cloud? I want to hear from you. Were you hit by the January meltdown? Did you spend your weekend fixing boot loops while Nadella talked about agents? Tell me your horror story in the comments below. And remember, if it works, don't update it. Subscribe for more tech updates and history. I drop videos every week.